Today marks the 5-year anniversary of the attack on the U.S. Capitol during the certification of former President Biden's election victory. And Democrats, like House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, are continuing to attack President Trump for his pardoning of the vast majority of the rioters during his first day back in office.
Over the last 5 years, instead of holding those responsible for the attack accountable, Donald Trump and far-right extremists in Congress have repeatedly attempted to rewrite history and whitewash the horrific events of January 6th. We will not let that happen.
Here to unpack the debate surrounding this January 6th is The Hill's Deputy Managing Editor Sarakshi Rai. Hey, Sarakshi, so we heard from Minority Leader Jeffries a second ago. That was at a hearing commemorating January 6th. What are Democrats doing to keep this issue from fading from memory?
That's right. The Democrats are using the 5th anniversary of the Jan 6 Capitol attack to really go after President Trump. They're accusing him of inciting the riot and pledging accountability, even though he's pardoned hundreds of defendants on his first day in office, like you said. Now, the 2021 riot, which unfolded as lawmakers were certifying former President Biden's election victory, really sent shockwaves throughout the country. It intensified partisan polarization and really prompted a sweeping reassessment of security around Washington, and also left millions of dollars in damage to the Capitol. I mean, we all saw those images and were transfixed seeing those images, and the Democrats are planning to hold a hearing Tuesday to mark this 5-year anniversary of the attack. Even in a Dear Colleague letter, the House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries said that the hearing will feature a panel of members recounting their experiences of that day, and they will also kind of talk about what he described was ongoing threats to free and fair elections that is posed by the Trump administration. So Democrats really using this anniversary to attack President Trump and his administration, Drew.
What about on the Republican side? Have there been any mentions of the anniversary?
So as of now, not yet. The president is meeting with House Republicans at a retreat in Washington, D.C. at the newly renamed Trump Kennedy Center. And also, if you remember, Drew, the House Republicans last year voted to authorize a select subcommittee to investigate the Jan 6, 2021 Capitol attack and potentially the previous Democratic-run Jan 6 committee. Now, let's not forget, we already have one Jan 6 committee investigating this attack, but this new subcommittee, which is chaired by Rep. Barry Loudermilk of Georgia, it does include a few Democrats and is looking into whether or not the Democrats in the previous subcommittee, kind of went out of their purview and kind of went after the Trump administration and the president a little unfairly, Drew.
And beyond some of the Democratic events, some former January 6 defendants are planning a march in Washington, D.C. What can you tell us about that?
That's right. The Jan 6 defendants will be gathering en masse in the streets outside the Capitol. It's really a split-screen action that's so pointed, because scores of now pardoned January 6 protesters will gather for a march to the Capitol, starting at the Ellipse. Now, it's being touted as a memorial for Ashley Babbitt, who was shot and killed by the police as she tried to illegally enter the Capitol. We heard from former Proud Boys chief Enrique Tarrio, who said that this will be a patriotic and peaceful march. He also said, "See you there." Now, let's not forget, Enrique Tarrio was convicted of seditious conspiracy, and he was sentenced to prison until 2045. But he's now had his conviction overturned because the president intervened and pardoned those January 6 defendants, Drew.
And Sarakshi, you have these dueling narratives about what January 6th actually stands for. What does that say about the state of polarization on the Capitol Hill as time continues to pass from when it happened to now?
That's right, Drew. What happened on January 6th and its aftermath ultimately laid the ground for the Trump 2.0 project, right? And really 5 years on, the fundamental events of that day established through, eyewitness testimony, thousands of hours of footage and hundreds of indictments, and really, one of the most extensive investigations in federal and congressional history they're just not agreed upon. For the president and many in his base, they have still kind of, featured what happened in the aftermath of January 6th as they have a long list of grievances, at least against the government, and accuse the government of conspiracy theories. We also know that the president continues to make the same false allegation that instigated the attack, that the 2020 election was stolen from him. So really what we've seen is that, at least for now, even in Congress, Democrats and Republicans cannot agree as to what exactly transpired that day, and have very different narratives that are going out into the public, Drew.
All right, we will leave it at that. Sarakshi Rai, thanks so much for your time.